In the world of electric cars, everybody is constantly hunting for the next Tesla. And for a minute there, a really bright, shining minute, it looked like Fisker Inc. was going to be it. They had a legendary designer, a product that looked absolutely stunning, and a valuation that just shot into the billions. But that dream, it didn't just fade. Oh no. It crashed and burned in one of the most spectacular failures the industry has ever seen. So let's get into it and unpack how it all went so wrong. So this isn't just a story about a car company that went belly up. Nope. This is a classic tale of massive ambition colliding head-on with a brutal reality. We're going to dive into how a company that looked like it had a clear shot at success ended up completely in a ditch, and what that tells us about the absolutely savage EV market right now. And you got to remember, this wasn't Henrik Fisker's first rodeo. We're talking about the design genius behind cars like the Aston Martin DB9. He'd already tried to launch a car company once, and it failed. So this was his big second act, and his timing seemed perfect. It was right in the middle of the EV gold rush, a time when investors were practically throwing money at any startup that looked like it could even sniff at Tesla's heels. And man, the promise they were selling, it was a knockout. The flagship, the Fisker Ocean, wasn't just another pretty SUV. They were marketing it as the world's most sustainable vehicle, made with recycled plastics and even a solar panel roofs. But here was the real kicker. A starting price under $40,000. I mean, on paper, it sounded almost too good to be true. And investors? Oh, they didn't just buy in, they went all in. When Fisker went public back in 2020 through one of those SPAC deals, its valuation just exploded, past $7 billion. Think about that for a second. $7 billion for a company that hadn't delivered a single car to a customer yet. The hype was absolutely off the charts. So with that kind of cash and that kind of momentum, Fisker started building a hype machine that honestly looked unstoppable. This wasn't just some other startup anymore. They were being positioned as a real contender, a force that was about to seriously shake up the entire EV game. And look, it wasn't just Wall Street getting excited. The public was totally on board. By 2022, you had more than 60,000 people who had put down actual money to reserve a Fisker Ocean. The media attention was huge, they had a built-in fan base. That hype train was running at full steam. Now, this was supposed to be Fisker's secret weapon. Instead of spending billions in years building their own factories, they went with what's called an asset-light strategy. Basically, they outsourced all the manufacturing to a super well-respected company in Austria called Magna Steyr. These are the guys who already build cars for giants like BMW and Jaguar. The whole idea was to save a ton of money, lower the risk, and get cars out the door way faster. On paper, it looked like a genius move, right? A clever shortcut to avoid that production hell that just crushes so many other EV startups. But as we're about to see, the gap between that brilliant idea and how it actually played out in the real world, well, it was catastrophic. Okay, so fast forward to 2023. The first Fisker Oceans are finally hitting the streets and reaching customers. This should have been their victory lap, the moment of triumph. Instead, it was the beginning of the end. The problem started, well, almost immediately. I mean, the cars were just falling apart. And we're not talking about a squeaky door or a bit of loose trim here. We're talking about widespread, serious software failures. Customers were reporting that their screens would just freeze up, their key fobs would stop working, the doors wouldn't open. Some people even reported critical brake system warnings, and, get this, cars just randomly shutting down while they were driving. And what made this whole nightmare even worse was that Fisker had zero plan to fix any of it. There were no service centers, no stockpiles of parts to make repairs, and the customer support system was just completely buried. Owners were literally stranded, and it didn't take long for federal safety regulators to come knocking and launch multiple investigations. So you've got a product that doesn't work, and a sea of angry customers. The whole company just started to unravel with terrifying speed. The financial side and the operations side, they just started to buckle, leading to this incredibly fast and final downfall. I mean, just look at the gap between what they told investors and what actually happened. It is staggering. Fisker projected they'd sell over 40,000 cars. The real number? They sold less than 10,000. As soon as word got out about all the problems, demand just cratered, leaving the company with giant parking lots full of cars they couldn't sell. And the financial consequences were just brutal. Fisker was burning through cash, they weren't paying their suppliers, they had to halt production, and their stock price just nosedived. We're talking a collapse of over 95%. Billions of dollars in investor value, just gone, vanished, and the company had no way to raise any more money. Their final months were just this series of frantic, last-ditch efforts. They tried to get a rescue deal with Nissan, but that fell through. In a desperate move, they slashed prices by as much as $24,000 just to get cars off the lots, but it was way too little, way too late. By mid-2024, they told investors the end was near, and in June, it was official. Fisker filed for bankruptcy. So that brings us to the big question. How does a company with so much promise, so much money, and so much hype fail this spectacularly? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was a perfect storm of really critical mistakes. So let's really dig in. Why did this happen? Again, understanding this is, well, it's a huge cautionary tale for the entire EV industry. It really boils down to 5 huge, interconnected mistakes. First, they totally overhyped a product that just wasn't ready, making promises they had no way of keeping. Then, to try and meet those promises, they rushed production, shipping cars with software that was fundamentally broken. Their so-called asset-light outsourcing strategy, the thing that was supposed to be their biggest strength, became their biggest weakness. See, they lacked the in-house expertise to manage all the different suppliers and make the systems work together. That led to a complete lack of quality control. On top of that, they had no real customer support, so every little bug became a full-blown crisis for the owners. And all of this was happening just as the EV market got way more competitive and overall demand started to slow down. It was a textbook case of having a big dream without the execution to back it up. In the end, Fisker's collapse is more than just the story of one company. It is a massive warning sign to every other EV startup out there chasing that same dream. It proves that in a race this competitive, hype might get you off the starting line, but only a flawless product and solid execution can actually get you to the finish. And it really makes you wonder, as this EV race gets even more crowded, who else might be flying a little too close to the sun?